You're about to listen to the Dr. Daliah Show. Sassy, stimulating medical talk radio. Any medical advice Dr. Daliah Wax gives on her show should not be substituted for an actual visit to your medical provider. And now, here's Dr. Daliah.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. So before we start, this caught my eye. Life on Mars confirmed. Really? Well, let's meet them. Let's say hi. I'd like to say hi. It's not that kind of life. But NASA has announced the discovery of microbial life on the surface of Mars. Why is this such a big deal? Well, one, because I think a lot of us do suspect that there is life. I think they found water and evidence of water, and so I do believe that there are life forms. But what makes this so interesting, especially for a science geek like me, is what is in this life, microbial life's DNA, or this microbial's DNA, to make it so resistant to the horrific conditions on Mars? And can that later be used to understand how we can live on Mars? Although I have no desire to. I know they're already signing people up. People want to live on a Mars colony. Count me out. You guys go ahead and do it. Knock yourselves out. Not for me. Well, Sean Duffy, who is also administrator of the space of NASA, said a sample collected by the Perseverance rover has been declared the clearest sign of life on the red planet. NASA's Associate Administrator Nick Fox said this is the kind of signature that we would see that was made by something biological. So it's not poo-poo. I know a lot of us are looking for poo-poo on Mars. Nope. But what they're doing is they're looking for unusual spots and seed-like shapes in ancient Martian rocks that might point to the existence of tiny life forms in the distant past. They call these little poppy seeds or leopard spots, even though they are not expected to be poppy seeds or leopard spots. But according to Daily Mail, they found these sort of poppy seeds and leopard spots in mud-like rocks in Neret Vallis, part of the Jezero crater, where a river existed billions of years ago. Yes, they have already named parts of Mars. I know some of us are like, well, why don't you just call Tatooine and start, use some of the Star Wars terms. I don't think they're ready to do that. But Neret Vallis and Jezero crater are current names. Now, the rover has been exploring this region since it landed back in 2021. Scientist Joel Hurwitz revealed how these little tiny signatures found in the crater pointed to the existence of life on Mars billions of years ago. The rover's tools detected chemicals like iron and phosphorus in these spots, which can form when tiny microbes break down into organic material. This is really, really cool. So the rover started beaming back images to Earth for years, revealing these crystalline solids left over from water flowing on the surface and a reddish area that contained organic compounds and an energy source for what they believe could have been microbial life. So this Perseverance rover collected the rocks on July 21st, 2024, while it was exploring the northern edge and the ancient river valley that was formed 3.7 billion years ago. And these scientists noticed vein-like structures. Well, vein-like structures are usually made through a flow. We have them with our blood. They have them, on Mars, they're assuming it was some sort of water. And they also found white calcium sulfate, meaning water deposits like we see on our pipes. They say the crystalline solids on the Martian surface were hard water deposits left behind by ancient groundwater flowing through the now dusty landscape. Between those veins were bands of material with a reddish color suggesting the presence of hematite. Hematite is one of the minerals that makes Mars its reddy, rusty look. So I know a lot of people think it's iron because I live in southern Nevada and we have these rocks in red rock that are really, really rusty looking and red. That's rich with iron. I don't know if there's any hematite there, but for Mars, it's hematite. So what do we do with this information? I'm looking at pictures of some of these little spots and what that could mean. First, can I just say, wow, that we are able to get such pictures from another planet, such vivid imagery. It blows my mind. I think this is really, really cool. But the idea of, well, if it happened billions of years ago, why should we care? We're still trying to figure out why we exist. We're still trying to figure out this whole, Big Bang theory, or, why all the planets were made. And I'm still trying to figure out why there were 9 planets, right? And we had to memorize. My very educated mother just served us 9 pizzas to remember Mercury, Venus, Earth, Mars, all the planets. I'm still kind of in a little bit of a shock that we went from 9 planets to multiple, because now there's all sorts of planets and we can't do that mnemonic anymore. But, we are concerned about, well, when does Earth go away? When do we, as a population, cease to exist? Is it going to be a sunstorm? Is it going to be an asteroid? Does the gaseous star of the sun explode? I mean, what ends up happening? And so what we try to do is look back at what happened on other planets and see what could have possibly lived there, and then why it doesn't continue to live. Do I think there are current microbes and life on Mars? If there is, these are some sturdy sons of guns. And if that's the case, and look how I cleaned up my language for radio. I know. If that's the case, we need to figure out what makes them so, shall we say, resistant and sturdy. Now, we can't breathe on Mars. We die. We can't breathe on the moon. Now, we have Earth, and we've been talking about, well, why can't we go to Venus? Venus is very similar to Earth. No, the gas is poisonous to us. But what if we could figure out how to make it not poisonous? Yes, it might be an mRNA vaccine. No, but still, what if we figure out a way to, because people want to go and live on Mars. We got to figure out a way to protect them somehow. 1-877-Doc-Daliah. Hey guys, it's Dr. Daliah. Fantasy football season is coming, but sadly, too many of you are taking the bench while the country takes part in one of the most exciting and lucrative industries out there. Don't know how to play? Well, huddle up and listen. Paul Kalikas and I have written a fantasy football pocket guide for beginners. This book walks you through the basics and shows you how simple and lucrative joining or creating a fantasy football team can be. Read our fantasy football pocket guide for beginners found on Amazon, or follow the links on X and Facebook. That's Fantasy Football Pocket Guides for Beginners. Don't be left out.
At Hotshot Secret, we share the science behind common diesel problems. For example,
diesel fuel cetane levels.
The cetane rating in diesel fuel is 42 to 45. Most diesel engines operate more efficiently with a cetane rating of 48 to 50. One treatment of Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme will raise your cetane 7 points, increase fuel economy, and improve cold starts.
Hotshot Secret Diesel Extreme is available nationwide at truck stops, fine farm and auto stores, and online at hotshotsecret.com. Hotshot Secret, powered by science.
Have you ever thought you'd like to buy and sell houses but didn't know how or where to get the money? My name is Ron LeGrand, and over the past 40 years, I've bought over 3,000 houses without using my money or credit, and taught thousands to do the same. Today, even in a virtual environment, we buy nice houses in nice neighborhoods using no banks, realtors, contractors, or other costly entanglements, and build huge cash flow and wealth without the hassle of tenants, all without credit and little or no money. You don't need a license or experience, and I'll show you exactly how it's done. Text FREE to 99799, and I'll send you my free training. I promise you I'll change the way you think about real estate and open the door to a new lifestyle that doesn't involve risk or rehabs and can quickly replace your current income. Text FREE to 99799, and let me show you how to take your life back and build cash flow and wealth from your home. That's FREE to 99799. Again, FREE to 99799.
Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-A-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. Big thanks to Talk Media Network for making the show happen. Big thanks to Daniel, our producer, and big thanks to you all for tuning in. We really do appreciate it. Don't forget to follow us on Twitter or X, the Dr. Daliah, Facebook, the Dr. Daliah Show, and on YouTube. Click like and subscribe. So one thing that really gets my panties all up in a bunch and really gets me angered is when you look at other people kind of going into your lane. All right. So I'm a physician. And being a physician, I have an opinion on a lot of things that are medical. And so, whether it's your vaccines, whether it's your cholesterol screening, whether it's your, and I'm apologizing. I know some of you are trying to watch us on Facebook Live. We just had an issue. I apologize. We just had an issue with the broadcast. Sit tight. Let me see if I could get it back up. But, as I was saying, as it pertains to, my opinion, I don't think is the only opinion out there. I understand that there's a lot of opinion, but it should be considered, right? My opinion should be, at least given some, shall we say, attention. And instead, what's been happening is politicians have been, I guess, hijacking anything that they could use politically. And that's a problem. And so now what we're seeing as it pertains to vaccines is this whole big, shall we say, takeover. Now vaccines have become the main talking point for Republicans and Democrats, as RFK Jr. has decided to, now that the dust is settled with COVID, take a step back and go, look, if you're high risk, here's the COVID vaccines for those of you that are high risk or have at least one risk factor. But if we have a child who's healthy, a 6-month-old child, if we have a pregnant woman who doesn't want to get the vaccine, we are not going to be recommending it widespread. Well, what's happening are states across the United States are now rallying and coming up with coalitions to buck what the CDC and the FDA is recommending. And what is very frustrating for patients is doctors are mixed. So I went to medical school at UNR here in Nevada, or in Nevada. For those of you that are listening in Nevada, I went to school here. I went to UNLV, UNR, and then I did my last year at UCLA. And how I was taught was whatever was true medicine back in 1962 or 1947 may have to be revisited. And pandemics change. Microbes change. Viruses and strains change. And so just because something worked 20 years ago or 5 years ago might have to be revisited. So we'll have to redo a lot of the work. Some may always, withstand, time and evolving science. But understand that things change. Our bodies change. Our absorption changes. Our environment changes. And so when I heard that RFK Jr. is like, look, I know during the COVID pandemic, it was like everybody get their vaccine and then some. Now we could take a step back and really evaluate the efficacy, and we could evaluate the safety. So if you're high risk, we're still going to recommend it. Still going to be recommended for those of you who are high risk, or at least have one risk factor. And obesity is a risk factor, which means millions of Americans still have the ability to, in fact, everybody has the ability to get the vaccine. Those who are not high risk, if your doctor wants you to have it, they can write a prescription and you can get it. Now, everybody's getting their panties all up in a bunch going, he is restricting the ability. People cannot get the vaccine. People cannot. Well, there's a few things that are going on that I see as a physician that nobody is really asking us doctors about. Now, I understand the American Academy of Family Physicians, the American Academy of Pediatrics, they are more conservative, not in terms of politics. They're more liberal, but conservative in terms of do more. Well, although the USPSTF is kind of the opposite, where we'll do less. So that's still a little, but I understand that they are going to be on the side of, look, let's just, it's easier to just let everybody have access to it. The problem is we have parents pulling their kids out of school in droves because they're done with the whole vaccine thing. They think there are too many vaccines. And I'm worried that polio could come back. You know, I'm worried about pertussis. I'm worried about a lot of things that we protect our kids. But because there's not a lot of, shall we say, data on how imperative it is for a healthy 3-year-old or 6-month-old or 5-year-old to have the COVID vaccine, parents are now completely losing trust in the situation, in the CDC. And so they're like, you know what? I want to hold off until I know that these vaccines don't have another gain. You know, it's not about the pharmaceutical companies. It's not about one political party. So we're seeing kids pulled out of school and parents not vaccinating. That's a concern. Well, why? Because we overdid it with the COVID vaccine. We also have people asking, patients asking, going, look, if there are side effects to these vaccines, why do you want me to get it now in 2025? Well, the CDC has to answer that. The CDC has to answer why, if COVID is not as virulent and not as deadly as it once was, do we need to widespread vaccinate? People want that answer. I don't blame them for wanting that answer. So what the CDC did, which I completely agree with, is, guys, if you're high risk, for now, we're still recommending it. But we do have the opportunity to now roll back and now investigate if all healthy people need to be getting these vaccines. And another thing that people are forgetting is this isn't a one shot and you're done like they promised. They promised if we got the vaccine series, we were good, would never get COVID. No, they found out that the immunity wanes after a few months. So the CDC, the burden of proof is on them as to, do you need to get this vaccine every 5 months for eternity? When is somebody going to reevaluate and determine if that's really the safest and the right thing to do? Especially when studies, people say, follow the science, follow the science. Well, science is saying that the combo of the original vaccine and natural immunity, people getting COVID when it was weaker, gave the best protection. So patients want to know, what do I do in terms of natural immunity? You know, if natural immunity does protect us, how do we get natural immunity? Well, we aren't going to tell people to go and get COVID, but we might let them go through life like we have before a lot of the vaccines and allow their immune system to work with the vaccines they've already had. So these are a lot. Then another issue that nobody's talking about is the money. So to get a vaccine, COVID vaccines are at least a few $100s a shot. So who's paying for that? Now, the government was paying for that, but then after the emergency funding expired, the Biden administration didn't continue it. And it's understandable. Now that we're out of a pandemic, do we still have to be paying for a lot of these vaccines? And if we're paying for COVID, why aren't we also paying for flu? Why aren't we paying for, I mean, there's a lot of things we need to pay for. Why aren't we paying for Alzheimer's treatment? Why aren't we paying for breast biopsies? I mean, Obamacare is not paying for that. They're paying for the basic screen, but my mammogram has never been more expensive. I understand it is kind of a lot more than mammogram has to image, but still, that screening mammogram, that free screening mammogram, I've never gotten. I always get charged because it's not the basic one. So the next question is if we're trying to figure out how to have money for Medicaid, if we're trying to figure out how we have tax dollars for children with cancer, somebody has to revisit the issue on, okay, what are we paying for in terms of shots? Now, furthermore, what's really interesting about this whole topic is the average person does not want to get a COVID vaccine. We had less than 20% of the population last year get a COVID vaccine. They had access to it if they wanted to, and the majority of them were high risk. So not much change here. But if somebody really wants it, yeah, have your doctor write a prescription. That's kind of what you have to do with a lot of medicines and vaccines. But everybody's making it a big deal. The problem we have now is we have lost the trust of the public because politics got involved. So somehow, which is really stupid, people said, oh, you're getting a COVID vaccine, you're Democrat. You're not getting a COVID vaccine, you're MAGA. You know how many liberal Democrats did not want to get vaccinated or put it in their body? And how many conservatives and Republicans wanted the shot? It wasn't right-left. But now that you have these states wanting to buck RFK Jr. and they're blue states, people are now looking at vaccines as blue-red. And that is going to be a huge mistake. 1-877 Daliah, don't go away.
Looking for a gift that can actually help secure someone's future? It's Mark Falter's new book, Common Sense Income Strategies. It makes the perfect gift for that special someone in your life. Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using time-tested strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. To learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Secure your future with Common Sense Income Strategies by Mark Falter. Again, to learn how to receive your free copy, call 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635.
We are back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877 Dr. Daliah, 1-877 DOCDALI. So, emails that were found by the Senate Homeland Security and Government Affairs Committee appeared to contradict Dr. Anthony Fauci's sworn testimony on Capitol Hill. One of the reasons why I think Biden pre-pardoned him, which is scary stuff. And we wonder why people don't trust doctors. It's a shame. Kentucky Republican Rand Paul sent a letter Tuesday to the former COVID-19 response director with now demands for him to explain why his emails that were found contradict previous testimony, and why Rand Paul's accusation that he tried to conceal information from Congress was refuted when they have proof. According to Daily Mail, during a testimony given to the House Select Subcommittee on the coronavirus pandemic in June of 2024, Fauci was asked if he ever deleted official records, if he ever worked to obstruct freedom of information requests, or deleted communications relating to the, quote, Wuhan lab or the origins of the virus. He denied all of them. Yet Rand Paul provides at least two examples of instances where Fauci instructed fellow government employees to delete the email. There was an email dated February 2nd, 2020, where Fauci was then NIH director, or directed then NIH director Dr. Francis Collins to please delete this email after you read it. Another email dated July 20th to an NIH employee said, I do not want to engage anymore with this nonsense, and so please delete this email after you read it. Now, why would a doctor who is running, one of the largest health agencies and, reporting to, as he did, multiple presidents, why would he want to delete an email? And how does a doctor not know? And I'm not saying we're super smart, but how do you get through all the education you have and you think that deleting an email is going to be permanent? What exactly? I mean, it just doesn't make sense. It's not. It's almost as if his priorities were skewed, and I think his priorities were skewed. That's why at first I supported him And I commended, his first answer as it pertained to masks, saying, look, we don't know what we're dealing with here. The masks we're all using might not protect us, but they're the best we have right now. Yeah, and so use it, but understand you could still get COVID. They're only providing a barrier. And I was like, he's right about that. And then all of a sudden, from then on, his medical acumen and his instructions and recommendations just rang and dripped politics. And that bothered me. So him lying under penalty of perjury about wanting emails deleted and disagreeing with Republicans on what has been going on in terms of the COVID pandemic really does raise a lot more questions. So during one of Fauci's clashes with Senator Paul, the senator suggested he lied about the NIH's involvement in Wuhan, China, as it pertained to gain-of-function research. And the senator told Daily Mail that he was preparing to subpoena Fauci as part of an expanded Senate investigation into the origins of COVID and the U.S.-funded research in Wuhan, China. Why? People say, why are we beating a dead horse? We have found, and whether it was through the credit of Trump or Elon Musk and Doge, we have found that just because we have a new president, deceit, lies, and half-assed work did not go away. Look at how FEMA just had to fire 4 employees for looking up porn and sexting and other things on the job. All right, the government is just completely infested with workers, not everybody, but workers who are lazy, not doing their job, deceitful, or spending I think one FEMA employee spent 576 hours in 1 month on their social media and porn. I thought they were supposed to be working. So if we are funding research in Wuhan, China, and not overseeing it, just because you collaborate with another country, which happens often in science, doesn't mean you let your guard down. Doesn't mean you don't oversee. Doesn't mean you don't participate. But if our, government workers, not all of them, we have some really good government workers, but if some of them are lazy, as Fauci apparently was with this, collecting a $400,000 salary, it begs the question, what else are we funding and what else are we not overseeing? Biological research in the hands of somebody that has been pretty open about how they want to create clones and push the envelope of science. And we do need to have ethics committees and oversight of what is being done. And even if China was innocent in all this in terms of not manipulating the virus and not leaking it on purpose, you never go into business with somebody who's half-assed. This was not China's first rodeo or first lab leak. The first SARS outbreak that happened in 2002 was ruled by the ministry, I think Singapore's health ministry, that it was a lab leak. Then a couple people died in 2004 of SARS in China, again, attributed to a leak. So China has a reputation, even if it is completely innocent and not intentional, of losing viruses and spills. Well, then don't we want to watch what the hell is going on? This pandemic killed millions. COVID did kill. We don't have the numbers. The numbers are very skewed because some people had heart disease, some people didn't. Some people had stroke. What did the COVID cause the heart attack? Did they coincidentally have COVID? George Floyd, when he died, coincidentally had COVID. So how many of these were coincidental and how many of them were directly caused by COVID? But, that was a big mess up, not only by China, but also the World Health Organization and anybody that helped contribute to that research. And so covering up your butt was that, Fauci's priority? We don't delete in medicine. There is no reason to delete anything in medicine. Let's say a patient says, no, I had unprotected sex. And then they go, no. You know what? No, I didn't have sex at all. We don't delete. We may put a line through it or say patient retracts, but we don't delete. Do we throw out an old lab test? We never delete in medicine. We're not allowed to, because everything can be pertinent. We could say this lab was an error. We could say that the lab, even if it has another patient's name on it, you don't delete it. We keep our records. There's not really a lot of reasons to, delete something unless you're trying to hide something or you don't want people seeing something. Well, that warrants some explanation. And if he lied about deleting things, what else did he lie about? 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Hey guys, it's Clyde. We've had a lot of requests for Ground Zero merchandise, so we put together an online store with a big variety of high-quality items. I'm really excited to let you know about these things. We have a lot to offer you and your loved ones. In addition to our regular apparel, such as t-shirts, beanies, hoodies, and hats, we've expanded our product line with posters, flags, aprons, mugs, and a whole lot more. We also have Ground Zero collectibles, along with a limited edition of items like a Clyde Lewis canvas portrait, a Ground Zero embroidered jacket that will certainly make for great gifts and for interesting conversations with family and friends. And we now offer publications such as Ron Patton's book about mind control, MK Zine, and back copies of the official magazine of Ground Zero while it was in print. Paranoia, the Conspiracy Reader, also coming in 2023, are updated and revised books that I've written. There's a secure and easy-to-use shopping cart for your purchases. So shop today at our official store by going to groundzeromerch.com. Again, that's groundzeromerch.com.
Hi guys, Dr. Daliah here. Addictions can sneak up on us and come in many forms. Whether it's drugs, alcohol, sex, video games, porn, or something less obvious such as food, internet, or shopping, addiction can seem innocent at first and then evolve into an insurmountable evil. In our book, Addiction Basics, Caitlin Kalikas and I dive into the common addictions and provide tips for identifying and preventing these before they sneak in and take over our lives. Addiction Basics can be found on Amazon or my website, drdaliah.com. Check it out.
Lisa Wolf here to tell you about our newest website for old-time radio lovers. It's 100radioshows.com. At this site, there are 5 old-time radio shows waiting for you to download free as our gift to you. And be sure to browse the additional 700 old-time radio shows available to you for 70% off by using the promo code RADIO at checkout. This is a limited-time offer, so log on to 100radioshows.com. That's 100radioshows.com.
Back on the Dr. Daliah Show. Thank you all for tuning in. 1-877-DOC-DALI, 1-877-DOC-DALI. We have a rising STD problem. Boy, are STDs rampant. Maybe people think, you know what? Condoms are getting too expensive at $1 a condom. I could always get some penicillin or something, doxycycline, Rocephin shot. I could always get treated, or it's not going to happen to me. Or, spontaneity should come first. Who knows what people are thinking? But it has gotten so bad that this caught my eye. Koalas. These cute little koala bears are now going to be vaccinated for chlamydia. Really? STDs have gotten that bad? Researchers from the University of the Sunshine Coast spent more than 10 years developing a single-dose vaccine to protect the famed Austrian marsupial from the effects of chlamydia, which can cause urinary tract infections, infertility, blindness, and death. They say chlamydia is responsible for half of koala deaths in the country, according to CNN. Who knew? They say koalas are getting closer to extinction because of chlamydia. That's a Trivial Pursuit question, particularly in southeast Queensland and New South Wales. Infection rates within populations are often around 50% and in some cases can reach as high as 70%. So, if you're a koala, there may be a vaccine for you. Now, mind you, a lot of koalas also died from the deadly brush fires they had, and I love koalas. I'd like to help them. But we might want to come up with a chlamydia vaccine for us humans. Millions of people get chlamydia. It's the number one reported STD. The number one in terms of frequency is HPV. But chlamydia is still the number one reported STD. Now, the numbers are changing because people don't go to the doctor anymore. They use telemedicine. So they ask a telemedicine doctor to give them antibiotics. Now, we're not supposed to treat STDs over the phone. You have to be seen in person. You also have to get tested. And one of you had been very, very upset that you called a telemedicine company. You were exposed to what you thought was chlamydia, and you wanted to know why they wouldn't give you the treatment over the phone. Because there's a few reasons. One is there are rules, in place, but why those rules exist is if you had unprotected sex and you were exposed to chlamydia, then you might have also been exposed to gonorrhea. You might have been exposed to hepatitis, and you might have been exposed to HIV. So why would the medical profession just say, you know what? You think you were exposed to just this one single item, so we'll just go with that. And then if you have any questions or you think you have any other symptoms, come in. You might not feel your HIV. You might not, when people get HIV, yes, they get it through, drug use and IV drug use, and they could get it through breast milk and, so you can't pass it, from mom to baby, but you get it through unprotected sex. So what if somebody had unprotected sex, we want to use that opportunity to screen you. We also don't know 100% if what you think you were exposed to was exactly what you were exposed to. So one issue we're having with telemedicine is a parent will call saying, my kid was exposed to strep. You need to treat them for strep. They have a sore throat. Okay, well, you'd think that would be a slam dunk. But then when you ask them, well, what are their symptoms? They're coughing, runny nose, vomiting, diarrhea, and sore throat. Okay, do they have a fever? No. But they have a really bad sore throat. Okay, well, now it's not sounding like strep. Then you dig a little deeper. So this strep exposure, who was it? Oh, some mom said their kid is strep. Was their kid swabbed? Oh, I don't know. Was their kid told over the phone it might have been strep? Well, I don't know. How many times did I try to get out of something in school going, I have strep, and I never even went to the doctor? So we have to be really, really careful with telemedicine, in interpreting what you may or may not have. And so if somebody is, diagnosed with an STI and they don't really want to go into all the details, so they pick the one that seems to be the easiest, the most common, the easiest treatable, and they say, yeah, that's what I have. So then you go run and say, okay, I have that. Do you have it? How do we know you weren't exposed to others? Now, another thing that people don't really talk about as it pertains to STDs, and something that I noticed happen being a doctor in Las Vegas, is you come to Las Vegas to have a good time. You have an episode of unprotected sex, and then a few months later, you're hit with a lawsuit. Not because of assault, but because they now have herpes. And they blame you for having herpes. You go, wait a second, I've never had herpes. I've never had an outbreak. So you go run and take a test. You're positive for herpes. Now you have this pending court case where they are saying you gave them herpes. Well, if I was your defense attorney, I would say, no, could they have given it to you? There's a lot of money in herpes cases where somebody sleeps with somebody unsuspecting, gives it to them, then claims that that person gave it to them and now can sue. Now, how do you protect yourself against that? Well, one, use a condom, but still understand that skin on skin could spread herpes. 2, try to know your partner before you sleep with them. And 3, get your own STD panel. Your STD panel protects you. So if I was the defense attorney, and I don't know, I may eventually go back to school and get a law degree because I do find law fascinating. But if I was a defense attorney, I would say, when was your last STD panel? Show it to me. And if that STD panel was negative, and it was recently before the sexual encounter, you have a little bit of an argument there. But we fail to understand the necessity of how important it is to get checked from a health standpoint or from a legal standpoint. And I love that they're helping out the koalas. I think that's great. But the average person with an STD or an STI doesn't realize they have it. Some people do have symptoms. Burning when they pee, urethral discharge, vaginal discharge, a rash, like you might see with syphilis, malaise, fatigue. Sometimes early HIV is diarrhea. Now, I know a lot of you are like, man, I get diarrhea every time I go out to this one restaurant. Well, sometimes that might be the only symptom of somebody having HIV. So these symptoms get ignored or they get chalked up to be something else. And the average person with HIV doesn't figure it out day 1 or 2. You know, when I would diagnose somebody with HIV, I go, did you ever feel sick a while back that really wasn't necessarily flu or COVID or, well, you know, I did. I remember I felt odd. I felt like I had some sort of a virus. That might have been HIV in its early stages. So I don't want to worry you all, but also an STD could cause cancer. HPV is a virus that you can acquire through sex, and it is linked to throat cancer, rectal cancer, vaginal cancer, cervical cancer. So get yourself checked out. Let us medical professionals do what we need to do. Use condoms and protect yourself. 1-877-DOC-DALIAH.
Looking for an easy read that can actually help secure someone's future? Pick up a copy of Mark Falter's book, Common Sense Income Strategies. For the past 30-plus years, Mark has helped thousands of hardworking Americans secure their financial future by using strategies that continue to create wealth, whether the market is up or down. Strategies that will make perfect sense once you take the time to read this powerful book. Common Sense Income Strategies brings to you what Mark has been teaching in person and talking about on the radio for decades. It's not rocket science, it's a pretty easy read. You've worked too long and too hard not to see the fruits of your labor. Common Sense Income Strategies is available now on Amazon or by calling 866-764-2635. That's 866-764-2635. Common Sense Income Strategies by financial fitness show host Mark Falter. Secure your financial future today.